I would say is a thrust that people don't use an awful lot. It needs to be used more. It's not the easiest one to use, especially if you've got a cutting sword, because there is a risk from the cut. It's more practical with a small sword, but you should get it working with all your swords. So if Mike goes up into guard, so stand outside guard. The time that we really want to use second thrust is when we can get his hilt high. And that doesn't matter whether it's that the hilt goes high and the blade goes high, or the blade goes low and the hilt goes high. All that matters is that the hilt goes high. That's all we're concerned with. And that is our opportunity to strike the second thrust, or at least the best opportunity that we've got. So let's look at a common way that we can do this. First one, when you threaten to stab somebody in the face, they usually respond. Okay? So if I'm going to threaten the face, probably the most likely response is just to lift the hilt a little bit and cover. So let's look at that one first. So I threaten the face, drop under thrust. And notice this second thrust can sometimes end up moving on to the inside position, even though technically second thrust usually is outside. It can actually be either, it's just that the thrust's underneath the hilt of the sword. So it can strike from either way. So you see that again, on the command of feint, strike forward and threaten the face. And on attack, small circle and stab. Okay, that is a common scenario where we're going to use it. To make this work, and to not get hit when you do it, you have to use a feint to begin with, and you have to then be hitting them whilst they are responding. It's no good doing it like this, where we basically go feint and they've already parried, and then I go stab, because you will get hit. That's no good at all. For the sake of learning it, we can do it that slowly, and you will when you do this in a moment. But actually what it needs to be is in slow motion. I threaten the face like this. As the sword moves over, I stab before he gets to the parry. That's how we're actually going to use it. Okay? So we do a small feint deception. As he's moving into the parry, we hit. So you see from here, I launched a feinted thrust here in terce. And then I just did a small circle with my point and stab. You're happy with that? That's what we're going to be practicing now. Well worth in this scenario, bringing this hand into play. If you've got small swords, then you can use it to just open hand parry against the sword. And even if you go fighting broadswords and sabres, if they counter thrust against you, you can still do the same thing. So just for a bit of extra protection's sake, it's worth doing it with bringing this hand in. You feint, and then do it like this. So there's protection here. Okay? So with that, Mike, from here, in the outside guard position, push the feint forward when I say feint. On the command of attack, small circle and stab. Okay, so it's a tiny, tiny motion. This is one of the beauties of thrust work over cut work, is you don't need any room to develop power. You just make this tiny circle and change your angle of attack. And it's why you should be thrusting more with broadswords and sabres. It's awesome. Are you all happy with that one? Okay? So, feint and attack. Bring this hand up. You all happy? Okay, partner up. Another possibility that I mentioned at the start of the session is if you can get the opponent into a hanging guard position, we can use the second thrust against that as well. And the higher the hanging guard position, the better this is. So if they form basically a really low hanging guard, half hanging down here, you're going to struggle to really work against that, and you would change to do something else. But if you can get them into any hanging guard position of sort of shoulder height or above, that's where we can really use the second thrust against them really effectively. So how might we do that? Well, we need to, again, threaten their face. Again, trying to stab somebody in the face, it does provoke a response, or it should provoke a response, ideally. So, this time, then there are a few ways that we could do this. Okay, we could, for example, just lift over the top and launch a cut, if we've got a cutting sword, although theoretically a small sword can still do that as a thrust in action. It's called cutting over, where we do this and do this. So that can still be done with a small sword. That would be one typical way, okay? This. That's one way you can get them to go into a hanging guard. But, in doing so, kind of also leaves you a bit open and a bit exposed. So it's not always my favourite way to do it. Another way you can do it is this, is we can push onto their blade and threaten their face like this. And that will almost certainly make them go into the hanging guard, because that's the way they feel safe. And funnily enough, we could use a different thrust here, we could use the preem thrust, which I'll show you, but you're not going to practice tonight. Is I can apply pressure here, and then he goes to the hanging guard, I can drop the preem over the top. That's not tonight's session, we're on the second thrust today, okay? So we're going to use the threat of that to get them into the hanging guard. However you can get them into the hanging guard works fine. So, apply pressure there, and again you put pressure to their blade, and it goes up, lift it off, stab. Okay? And if you've got a cutting sword or you want to do cutting over, you can also, as I said, just from here, go up, threaten with a 1 to go to the hanging guard, and in. So however you want to do it, get them into the hanging guard. Those are the two options I'd recommend. If you're using the thrust sword, just push on towards the higher tip of their blade, and then apply pressure forwards, because they will almost certainly go into the hanging guard, and they will stab. If you've got a cutting sword, you can go over and do this, so they go into hanging and then thrust. And there are lots of other ways we can do it, but those I would say are the two of the most common options and two of my favourite options. Any questions? No? So remember, please, the attack that you're landing is the second thrust. That's the only option. You can vary your opening with feints, deceptions, applying pressure on the blade that we might call bearing or forcing. You can play with the feint part or the deception part, but the attack has to be the second thrust, which means you're striking in this position here. Second thrust normally aims somewhere around the flank area. Theoretically, you can stab somebody in the thigh with it, but it doesn't exactly happen that often.
Okay, just make sure when you do this drill now, that the first part you do actually threaten their face.
Yep, so literally just go onto their blade and push and threaten.
So if you're not doing that, if you're just pushing my blade, so if you're keeping the blade it's hanging over there, there's no guarantee that I'm going to do what you want. It's actually going to be threatening my face, so it's I've got to try and stop with my face.
Okay? And try and make a nice small range of movement with your point. It wants to be really small, the smallest little circle you can make. That's what will make it fast. You don't need to make huge, big actions. Thrust, all the energy is going forward. You don't need to generate power. Okay? So let's see that again. Base option is this. On the command of feint, you're going to apply pressure and force. I mean, technically it's more a force than or even a beat. And the opponent is going to go into hanging position. Attack, lift the point over, stab.
Just do that again.
Okay, back into guard. Okay, so feint, attack. You're happy with that one? Okay, park the back up. We both got cutting swords, like a broadsword might use the Spadroon, okay? There is a possibility that when I do this technique and he goes to the hanging guard, as I rotate to be my thrust, he'll just pivot around and do a cut. That is a concern. First thing is, as before, we need to be landing our blow whilst he's still going to the parry. So you can't basically wait for him to get to the hanging guard and then think, now I'll do my attack. We have to do it during his motion, just as before. This is a feint or a deception, so what actually needs to happen is, nice and slow, so I drive in, he goes to the hang-in, and I pivot around and strike before he gets to his guard, so there's no time to come back to the head. That being said, things don't always go to plan. If they did, you wouldn't get hit in the head at all. If at any time this isn't working, and there is a risk to the cut to the head, you just withdraw and protect yourself. And the beauty is with the second thrust, is you're already primed in a hanging position. Okay, so if we go through the sequence, and I think I'm going to be cutting the head, so I start applying pressure, I move into my thrust, and the attack's already coming around, well, I'm already set here to respond to it. So I'm already in a safe position. And with that knowledge, you should now realise that you could use this whole setup to put you into that position intentionally. So you might think, well, what I actually want to do is cut him on the head, or cut him in the rib, okay, or stab him in the rib. So you could do that whole sequence to build up to that scenario, baiting them with your head, but not baiting them like Jordan does in the head, where we just stand like this. Okay, we want a bit more subtlety than that. Okay, so we absolutely could do, right, we'll do that whole sequence now. The whole thing is a deception. So from here, I apply pressure to the hang guard, I go to here, the attack comes back in, bam, whack. you could use the whole thing as the setter. And from a thrust-based perspective, now let's assume that we're using small swords, we could say, I apply the pressure here, I go to the hanging guard, and the attack loops around to come into an attack, go into blade grabs down. Which takes us on to next session. Next session we're going to be using the second thrust to loop around to attack the other side, which feeds us neatly into disarms, because it's a scenario where you will frequently use this hand for weapon control and disarms. So next week we're going to be doing stuff on that. And that here ends the session.
Woo.